Hello, pull up a chair. My name is Earl McKenna, and the sea has given me more stories than fish. Before we tell today's tale, if you enjoy good prose with a smell of salt on, I'd ask for that favor. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any adventures. Now, this one's different. Most of my stories are about the one that got away, or the one I barely managed to haul in. This is about the only thing I ever caught that, well, it had a sense of humor. A dark one. It happened off the coast of Maine, way out past the Isles of Shoals, pushing into water that's too deep for comfort and too far for rescue. I was on the Odessa, my old 42-foot boat, the one with the engine that sounded like a washing machine full of rock. It was a day that shouldn't have been. The sky was a bruised yellowish gray and the sea was flat. Not calm, mind you. Flat, like a sheet of lead. There was a pressure in the air, a kind of electric hum you could feel in your teeth. I'd been out since before dawn, and by 3 in the afternoon, I hadn't gotten so much as a nibble. The water was dead. The gulls weren't flying. It was just me and that heavy, silent sky. I was running a deep line, hoping for a monster cod or maybe a halibut that had lost its way. The line was a 300-pound test, more rope than string, and the hook, a big forged steel circle hook that could have held a small car. I was in the cabin, nursing a lukewarm coffee, when the bell rang. Not the ship's bell. This was the big brass bell I'd rigged to the heavy-duty rod. I didn't use a reel for this kind of work. The line was set to a cleat on the stern. When something hit, it was supposed to just stop it. The bell didn't jingle. It clanged once like a church summons. I spilled my coffee and scrambled out onto the deck. The Odessa was stopped, not slowing down. Stopped, as if I just plowed into a reef. But I was in 600 feet of water. The line was bar tight, cutting the water with a low, vibrating thrum. It was the sound that got me first. It wasn't the high-pitched zing of a fish running. It was a deep, resonant bass note, like a cello being played in a cave. I put my hand on the line, and I could feel the vibration not just in my fingers, but in my chest. "Well, now," I muttered, wiping my hands on my oilskins. "You're a big one." I eased the boat into neutral. The boat didn't move. The line was so tight, it was singing. I looked at the cleat. It was a solid bronze fitting, bolted through the oak transom. The bolts were groaning. "Okay," I said, setting my feet. "Let's see who you are." This wasn't fishing. This was a tug of war. I didn't try to pull it in. That was impossible. My job was just to hold on. I put the engine in a slow reverse, just to give the line a little slack, to ease the strain on the cleat. The Odessa's diesel chugged, black smoke pouring from the stack, and the boat regained foot. And then the line pulled back. It wasn't a jerk. It was a smooth, relentless power. It was like being to a continent plate. The Odessa, all 14 tons of her, was being pulled forward against her own engine. The stern dipped, and a wave of green water washed over the deck, soaking me to the knees. My heart was hammering. This wasn't a whale. A whale surfaces. It breaches. This was just weight. Impossible, intelligent weight. This was the first hour. A stalemate. Me, my engine in slow reverse, and whatever was down there just holding its ground. The sun started to dip, turning that yellow sky into a sickly orange. The pressure in the air was so thick, I felt like I was breathing water. I settled in. I braced myself against the transom, my hands on the line, though I knew I couldn't hold it. I was just there to feel it, to see if it would give. It didn't give. It took. Suddenly the line started to move. Not fast, just a steady one-knot pull. "No, you don't," I growled. I slammed the throttle into full reverse. The engine screamed, the propeller churned the water into foam, and the boat, we just slowed it down. We were still being dragged out to sea. I was in a fight with something that was stronger than my boat. This went on for another hour, too. The sky was darkening, the water, and we were moving slow east, always east, away from land. I was getting scared, not of the creature, scared of the line. A 300-pound test is strong, but it's not that strong. It shouldn't be able to do this. It should have snapped. The cleat should have ripped out. But it held. Everything held. It was a perfect, terrible connection. I tried everything. I'd put the engine in neutral, letting it pull, and then slam it into reverse, hoping to jerk the hook free. It was like trying to jerk a mountain. I'd try to turn the boat to get a different angle on it. The line would just sing that deeper, angrier note and pull the stern back into line. It was toying with, or no, it was just indifferent. It was moving, and I was just an annoyance it was dragging along. The third hour was when it changed. The line, which had been pulling east, suddenly angled up. Its surface, I whispered, my mouth dry. I scrambled for the spotlight, my hands fumbling on the switch. I pointed the beam at the spot where the line entered the water. The water began to boil, not like a pot on a stove. It was a cold boil. The flat, leaden sea began to heave, swelling up in a great silent mound. The mound grew 10 feet, 20 feet, until it was a hill of black water, and then it broke. I didn't see a fin. I didn't see a tail. A back was vast. The spotlight beam, which could cut for a mile, only lit up a section. It was the size of a submerged boxcar, but it wasn't a whale. Skin. It wasn't skin. It looked like stone, like wet black granite covered in things. Barnacles the size of my head, strands of weed that looked like anchor chains. It rose and rose, and the water just streamed off it in rivers, and I saw my line. It was hooked into a thing on its back, a massive rusted iron ring like the mooring ring of a battleship. My hook was snagged right in it. I wasn't fighting a creature. I was hooked to a piece of the ocean floor, a piece of the floor that was moving. It sat there, this island of rock and ruin, for a full minute, breathing, though I couldn't see how. The water around it hissed and steamed. The smell hit me then, not fish, not salt. It smelled old, like rust and ozone and something else, ancient, coppery. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I just held the spotlight, my hands shaking. Then, as silently as it came, began to sink. It just submerged. The black water closed over it. The line went slack. My heart stopped. After all that, it was gone? It let go? I stood there, panting, the silence of the sea crashing in on me. The thrum was gone. I reached down, my hands trembling, and grabbed the line. It was loose. I started to pull. Word count, 1480. Good. I pulled. It was just dead weight, but the weight, it was manageable. Heavy, yes, but not the weight of a mountain. It felt like a 600-pound fish. What in the... My mind was reeling. Had I imagined it? Had the strain and the light and the weird air made me see an island? But the pull was real. I hauled, hand over hand. My arms were burning. My back was on fire, but the line was coming in. It was a 20-minute fight. Just me against the dead weight. I was pulling something up from the deep. Finally, I saw it, a shape, pale and white, rising in the darkness under the boat. I got the gaff, a big 10-foot steel hook, and I braced myself. It broke the surface. It was a halibut, a monster to be sure, the biggest I'd ever seen. It had to be 7 feet long, 4 feet across. A barn door, we call them, but it was just a fish, a big, flat, white-bellied halibut. I stared at it. The 6-hour fight. The pull that was stronger than my boat. The island of rock. And now, this fish. It didn't make sense. I hooked it. I gaffed it. The fish was dead. It had fought itself to death on the way up. I used the winch to haul it aboard. It landed on the deck with a whoomp that shook the whole boat. A magnificent creature, 600, maybe 700 pounds. A year's pay, right there. I sat down on the fish box, my legs giving out. I was shaking. The fight I'd just had, it was not the fight of a halibut, even a giant one. They're strong, yes. They pull, yes. But they don't tow a 14-ton boat against its own engine. They don't think, and they definitely don't have mooring rings on their backs. I looked at the hook. It was buried deep in the halibut's jaw, a clean hook. So what? What did I hook first? Had I hooked that thing, that rock, and in the fight, the line had somehow broken free, and on its way up, it had snagged this fish? That was impossible. Or the other thought, the cold one, was the halibut the bait? Had I been the one on the line? Had that thing been fishing for me, using this giant fish as a lure, and I just managed to pull the bait off its hook? My mind refused to accept it. It was too clean, too simple, and too horrifying. No, I'd hooked the fish. The fish was strong. The rest was the fog, the exhaustion, an old man seeing things. 6 hours. I went to the fish. I had to clean it, had to ice it down. Work had to be done. I took my knife. I knelt with massive pale. Its eye was the size of a saucer, dull and lifeless. I put my hand on its belly, ready to make the first cut. And the fish, it giggled. I know how that sounds. It didn't. It couldn't. But I heard it, a low, gurgling chuckle. It vibrated through the deck. Gah, huck, huck, huck. I froze, my knife in my hand. The sound, it wasn't coming from the fish. It was coming from under the fish. I stared at the dead halibut, and as I watched, its jaw, the one with my hook in it, opened slowly, and a sound came out, a wet, bubbling laugh. It wasn't the fish was dead, but something was using it. The laugh got louder. Ha, 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 gurgle, huck, huck, ha! It was a sound of pure, unadulterated amusement. It was the laugh of something that had just watched a fool struggle for 6 hours. I screamed, I don't mind telling you. I screamed and scrambled backward, falling over my own feet. The fish, the 700-pound fish, sat up. It didn't flop, it didn't thrash. It bent in the middle, like a man doing a sit-up, its dead head rising off the deck. It looked at me. Its dead, saucer eye winked. No, not the eye. Something behind the eye, a little spark deep inside the dead pupil. It sat there on my deck for a second, this laughing corpse. And then, in one smooth, powerful motion, it pushed itself up, flipped over the side of the gunwale, and was gone. Splash! The deck was empty. No fish, no blood. Just a few scales, the size of silver dollars, and my hook. It was lying on the deck, right where the fish had been, perfectly clean. I was left alone, in the dark, on a silent sea. The line was gone, the fish was gone. I got it on the boat, and it just laughed and jumped back in. It took me a long time to get back to shore. I didn't have any electronics. The compass was spinning, useless. I followed the stars, or where I thought the stars should be. When I got back to the dock, I tied up the Odessa. I walked off that boat, and I never set foot on it again. I sold it scrap. I've spent 50 years on the water. I've seen storms that could tear the skin off God. I've seen whales that could swallow a house. I've seen the northern lights paint the sky in colors we don't even have names for. But I've only ever seen one thing that made me believe, truly believe, the sea is not just a place, a person. And it's got a mean, mean sense of humor. I caught it, and it let me know I caught nothing. Folks, I have to tell you, the sea is a lonely place. It makes you question what you see. Right now, I'm questioning where you're seeing this from. Where in the world are you listening to this old man's tale? Let me know in the comments down below. It does my heart good to see how far these stories travel. And if you haven't yet, this would be a fine time to subscribe to the channel. Don't let this one be the one that got away. Word count, what 15 to 90. Good. It took me 3 days to stop shaking. 3 days before I could even trust my own hands to hold a coffee cup. I sat on my porch, just staring at the horizon, trying to make sense of it. I couldn't. What was it? Was it the fish? The fish possessed? Was it some kind of mimic? I've heard the old legends, the Scandinavian tales of the draugar, the sea dead that guard wrecks, the stories of the kraken, but this wasn't that. This was quieter, more personal. The laugh, that's the part that sticks. That wet, gurgling, knowing laugh. It wasn't a sound of aggression. It wasn't a threat. It was mockery. It was the universe looking at me, a tiny, wet, scared man on a piece of floating wood, and finding the whole situation hilarious. I thought back on the the 6 hour, the island of rock, the mooring ring, and I finally understood. I'd never hooked the halibut, not really. I'd hooked something else, something big, something structural, and that something, it had held on to me for 6 hours. It had tested me. It had pulled me. It had looked at me, and then it had sent me a message. The halibut, that was its giggle. It had, I don't know, attached the fish to my line, all dead and ready for me. It had let me pull it in. It had let me have my moment of victory. You fought me for 6 hours, it was saying. You in your little boat. You thought you were fighting me. Here is what you were really fighting. And it showed me the halibut, a big, dead, stupid fish. And then, just to make sure I got the joke, it made the fish laugh. It was the sea itself, deep. It was the intelligence of that dark, cold place. It was telling me that I was small, that my boat was small, my life small, and that my greatest, most desperate 6-hour battle was just a punchline to a joke I'd never understand. I took the scales, the ones left on the deck. I still have them. They're in a little wooden box on my mantel. They're as big as my palm. They're not fish scales. They don't bend. They're hard, like porcelain, and they're always cold. Even on the hottest day of summer, you pick one up, and it's like holding a piece of ice. I've had them analyzed. Well, I tried. I took one to a fella at the university in Boston, a marine biologist. He looked at it for a long time, turned it over, scraped it, put it under a microscope. He asked me where I got it. I told him I found it on the beach. He looked at me, this old fellow with glasses thick as bottles, and he said, "Mr. McKenna, these are not scales." No, they're lamellae, like on well, I don't know what. He said they were made of a silica-based compound he'd never seen. Not calcium, like a shell, silica, like glass. He said the structure was impossible, that it was stronger than steel, but lighter than plastic. He offered me $10,000 for the one scale. I told him no. I told him it was a souvenir. He asked me, a souvenir of what? I looked at him, and I just said, a joke? He didn't get it. I left. I went home. I put the scale back in the box. I never went deep sea fishing again. I stick to the coast now. I catch mackerel. I catch striper. I catch things that make sense. But sometimes, at night, when the wind is blowing hard from the east, the fog is thick, I can hear it, faint, just on the edge of the sound of the waves, that wet, gurgling chuckle. And I know it's still out there, and it's still laughing. We go out on the ocean, and we think we're conquerors. We have our boats, our engines, our electronics. We think we're smart. But the sea is older than time. It's deeper than our understanding, and it has a memory. You can fight it, and you might even think you've won, but all you've really done is given the deep something to laugh about. The greatest catch isn't the one you haul onto the boat. It's the one that hauls you into a story you can never explain. I appreciate you sitting and listening to this. It takes a bit out of me to tell it. If you enjoyed the story, and you want to make sure this old man's tales keep finding their way to shore, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me.